In 1890, an Irish writer decided to look in the mirror, find not only his appearance but also his own soul, and put it to words everything that he found. Or even better, to make a picture of it, by transforming the colors into words and then to write one of his masterpieces. Maybe the most beautiful one, because inside of it we find the real essence of Oscar Wilde, controversial writer with a complicated and ambiguous personality, hard to be understood even by himself. We are talking about The Picture of Dorian Gray, profound but extremely complex work, testament of the dualism of Wilde's soul. Dualism that accompanied him from his young years to the end. Wilde was born in Dublin on the 16th October 1854 in a rather wealthy family. This condition allowed him to study in well-known universities and to spend his young years reading, learning, and becoming more and more interested in the Greek art and truly obsessed with aestheticism. When he finally finished his studies, a new life began for Wilde. He spent all his time traveling and having relationships that were very discussed at that times. These relationships left a deep mark on his life and also on his heart. In a few times, he became a very active and popular person in the 19th century society, not only for his artistic creativity, but also for the scandals connected with him. It's not surprising that his work, The Picture of Dorian Gray, so close to be a representation of Wilde's soul, may be the one that gave him the greatest success. The work was firstly published in 1890 on a monthly magazine, and then some parts were changed a little by adding new chapters, and after that, the finished work were printed and published again in 1891. The book is all about this young man, Dorian Gray, who arrived in London after he had inherited the fortune of his old uncle. Dorian is described as a respectable, handsome, nice, kind-hearted, and pure guy. At once, he made the acquaintance of an artist, Basil Hallward, who, after being struck and seduced by the great beauty, kindness, and purity of this young man, decided to paint a portrait of him and become also his friend and confidant. Paradoxically, it was precisely through Basil that Dorian began to have a perverted lifestyle. One day, in fact, he made the acquaintance of Henry Wotton, friends going back a long way of Basil. Cynic, distant, lover of body pleasures and interested in leading down a bad road every person worth his attention, Harry gave advices and principles about life and about how people should spend their young years as best they could. These principles fascinated Dorian, who decided to enjoy forever his young age and this beauty. He made a pact with himself, with his vanity, asking to stay forever young and to transfer his sins to the portrait. From that moment onwards, he began to follow to the letter every Henry's advice about perverted life. He found love in a theatre actress, Sybil Vane, but after a few times he cheated her with dozens of ladies. He was responsible for a lot of deaths, including Sybil's one, Basil's one, who had discovered the bane of his painting, and of other friends of him that he himself influenced in a negative way so much that they were brought to suicide. Time goes by, and the portrait did not represent the beautiful face of the young man anymore. There was an horrible, battered, evil demon. Burdened with the weight of his own impure and cruel soul, Dorian decided to put an end to his bane by stabbing the portrait and, as a consequence, by killing himself. It is exactly in the final part that we can notice the major difference between the book of Oscar Wilde and the film adaptation of 2009 of the director Oliver Parker. In the movie Dorian Gray, in fact, the secret of the portrait was discovered by the great friend Henry Wotton, who, frightened by the bad behavior of the young man, burned the painting and locked Dorian in the same room. At first glance, this might be seen as an insignificant difference. Actually, in the movie Dorian redeemed himself only when his destiny is already marked, that is, in other words, when Harry had already set the room on fire. The protagonist regrets only thanks to the help of his loved ones, because he was incapable to solve the situation by himself. In contrast, in the book, the way to Dorian's redemption is made up of self-analysis. It is something that he must accomplish without anyone's help, and only after understanding that living with a filth and evil soul does not have any sense. It's a more devious path than the one described in the film, A path that began with the death of Sybil and finished with the murder of Basil. The entire book seems to be mostly concentrated on the psyche and the dualism of the main character. The reader tries constantly to understand him and excuse him. The film, surely for the cinematographic necessity of keeping the attention of the viewer focused on the screen and making Dorian's scenes more realistic and clearer with sex and cruel murder scenes, brought the spectator to hope that Dorian dies soon. The character of Basil is presented in different ways in the book and in the film. In the first one, Basil loves Dorian for the effect that he has on his art and inspiration. In the second one, Basil is literally in love with Dorian, and before he kills him, he spends a night with him. The role of Dorian was assigned to Ben Burns, an actor maybe too blank for a character that changed many times the way he sees the world, but that in any case does not give a bad impression. We should remember that it's not easy at all, especially for a young actor like Burns, to personify such a strange character like Dorian Gray. Absolutely spot on the connection between Harry Wotton and Colin Firth, who makes a fantastic job by resulting plausible and very histrionic as Wilde wanted. Even the atmosphere of the movie is appropriate for the times of Wilde's work, and for such a tragic story, with the succession of scenes filmed in bright ballrooms and scenes filmed in the obscurity of the suburbs of London and Dorian's house, which becomes darker and darker at the same pace with the protagonist. It's a very successful movie that, even if sometimes it is different from the original story, finds its own beauty in the spectacular nature of the tragedy, in keeping the attention of the viewer focused on the screen, at the same time in making him a part of the story. In fact, at the end of the film, everyone is supposed to ask him or herself, "Is my soul really pure? Can I say that I am a very good person or not?" The picture of Dorian Gray is a mysterious trip deep inside a contradictory personality. A trip in the beauty and the demons of youth. A trip inside our souls to understand which part of us prevails, which part must be suppressed, and which part must be set free.